Yo Papa fam, welcome back to another video. Today I'm pretty excited to show you something completely different, but it's pretty game changing for us developers. We've teamed up with Amazon to showcase a brand new AI powered CLI tool that lives right inside of your terminal, and it's called the Amazon Q Developer CLI agent. Now of course, a big shout out to Amazon for sponsoring this video, but as always, everything I say in this video is my honest take. I wouldn't show you anything I wouldn't personally use myself, and all of my opinions are absolutely 100% my own. So first up, what is Amazon Q Developer CLI? So here's the vibe, because everyone loves vibe coding at the moment. We've seen AI tools suggest code snippets before. This one's a little bit different. So the Amazon Q Developer CLI is an agentic AI assistant, meaning it doesn't just suggest us stuff, but it can actually do the work. It has a selection of tools, and then it can go ahead and use those tools to carry out the suggestions that it makes. So in a nutshell, you tell it what to do in plain English, and then it can act on it. It can write and edit your code, it can read your project files, run bash commands, read and view images, interface with AWS tools if it needs to, and it can adapt to your feedback in real time. And you might have heard of MCP servers. It can go ahead and use those too. It's powered by some of our favorite LLMs, including Claude, and you can also switch the models if you want to. But essentially, it's like having a full stack developer living inside of your terminal. The best part, it's completely free with just a builder ID. You don't need an AWS subscription, and you don't need your billing details either. So let's jump into a real world build and put it to the test. So head over to the AWS website and you'll find the Amazon Q Developer for CLI page. So on the website, we can select the platform that we're using. So in this case, I'm going to use Mac OS. Bear in mind, you can also use Homebrew to install Amazon Q by using brew install Amazon-Q. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and click on Mac OS. So once you've gone ahead and done that, it'll pop up as a download. You simply have to go ahead and open the Amazon Q DMG file, and you can go ahead and install it like so. Now, I've already done that step, so I don't need to do that. Once you go ahead and do that, you'll have Amazon Q up and running on your machine. Now, once it goes ahead and opens up, you'll have something like this appear on your screen. You're going to need to go ahead and likely enable the accessibility options. So this is typically where you go into your settings and go ahead and enable access so Amazon Q can work inside of your CLI. I've already done that like so over here. And then integrations, you just want to go ahead and check and make sure these are enabled. So this is where it can work in our terminal, VS Code, and if you're using Hyper or iTerm or any of those others, it's also going to work over there as well. You can see a couple of the features it had: CLI completions, chat, inline completion. I really like this one especially. And we even have translate, right? So a lot of things that we can go ahead and do. Now, how do we actually go ahead and start using it? So let's go ahead and get started. We have our terminal open here. So I'm going to CD into my documents, and you can see I've already got a nice intelligent autocomplete that I can go ahead and use right now. That is part of Amazon Q. And as you can see, I'm in my builds folder. Now, inside of my builds folder, I want to go ahead and speak to Amazon Q, and I want to build a Connect for game using Next.js. So typically I would have to use something like npx create Next.js, next app, and then this will go ahead and use, the template to go ahead and get set up with a starter pack. However, let's do it a different way, right? So I'm going to type in Q to enable Q chat, and then we can simply go ahead and type in Q chat. Now, if you do want to know what the commands are, you can just type in -- help all, and this will go ahead and give you all of the commands that you can go ahead and use. In this case, we can just simply go ahead and put in Q chat. This is how we first enable Amazon Q, and then we can chat to it in a real human-like way. And this could be English. It could also be a bunch of different languages, and it will understand. So I'm going to say, I want to create a Next.js app with the create Next app kit, use Tailwind and modern tech, and create a simple Connect for game. There we go. So in this case, it's going to go ahead and create a Next.js app with the Create Next App Kit, and it should go ahead and do it itself. Now, as it's an AI agent, it's going to be able to use tools. And every time it uses a tool, it's going to give us the command that it's going to run, tell us which tool, and it will give us the reasoning as to why it wants to do that. In this case, you can see it's using this command, TypeScript, Tailwind, ESLint, and all the following. That's great. We can either press T to trust it always, or we can press Y to enable it once, or N to say, no, I don't trust that. In this case, it's T for this session. So we're going to always allow the execute bash script for this session so it can kind of get on with its thing. Now, it's got a conflict. That's most likely because of the directory I'm in. However, you can see it's going to go ahead and create the game with the title Connect for Next.js game. Now, I think it's going to, we also had that one. So we're going to call it Connect for Modern Game. So as you can see, I've been testing it a bunch before. So in this case, let's go ahead and let that do its thing. And right now it's setting up the project for us. Now, why is this really handy? Well, I'm always on the go. I'm flying, shooting, bouncing between different projects. If I'm on the move or at a coffee shop and I need to quickly get a project up and running, I can now, in under a minute, initialize the Next.js app, install the dependencies, set up my Tailwind config, and commit the starter files, all without having to, really get involved too much. Amazon Q takes all of the headache away from me. So in this case, you can see it went ahead and created the Connect 4 modding game. Now, while it starts to build the components of the game, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a separate terminal, head over to that directory. So in this case, this is the directory, and I'm going to type in code dot. The reason why I'm going to do that is I want visibility over what is going on. So in this case, right now, if I had to pop on the right-hand side, we've got Amazon Q doing its thing. And as you can see, it's already starting to pose a couple of changes. Right now, we have a clean branch, but it's suggesting that it wants to make these changes to the app. So in this case, I'm going to press T to always allow it. And now we should be able to start to see some changes being made. So you can see that it's actually starting to add in the Connect 4 game logic itself. And this is handy because now I can actually see what's going on inside the app, right? So obviously we have our starter template, and then you can see it's starting to create the game board. This is using TypeScript. All of this is being done by Amazon Q. Now, yes, this is the concept of vibe coding. However, my biggest advice to all of you is this powerful and is it a great tool? 100%. Would I trust vibe coded outcomes? Absolutely not. Never in a million years. Instead, I treat it as if it's an AI intern that is coding to help me in my project. And then I will review the code like so. I will go through, I will see all of the changes. And before a single commit is made, I will review and make sure I understand all of the code. I say this all the time to all of my students. Vibe coding will assist you in many ways. However, you as a developer should always understand the fundamentals, and you should never commit code that you do not understand what it's doing or you have no idea of what's going on. Okay, so what you can see now is it's got to the point where it's running the app on localhost 3000. However, let's give it a run. So head over to localhost 3000 and we should have a fully functional Connect 4 game. Amazing. So let's click on new game. And as you can see, I can click on each column to go ahead and do it. And you can see we've got move history, total number of moves. Let's go ahead and see, will it determine a winner? Hey, there we have it. We have the game result being the winner. And then we can even undo our goal as well. So all of this, look at this, smooth animations, really, really nice stuff. And it's fully responsive. I absolutely love that. That's very, very cool. All right, so it did this pretty much in a very short amount of time. This is where it can be pretty powerful for prototyping and things like that. Now, of course, there are some UI glitches. You can go ahead and, suggest that maybe, for example, this one, if I was to go ahead and, maybe I want to tell it to fix this by going ahead and centering it inside of the highlighted area, I can go ahead and take a screenshot of this, go ahead and just pop it over like so. I can go and pretty much grab my screenshot, pull it over, and then pop it in here. And as you can see, it's got the file directory, and I can say, I want to center the circle in the highlighted column as it's currently offset, right? We can also say something like, also make the Connect 4 title bigger, right? So you can go ahead and just start giving it feedback. And now we have that peer programming, conversation going on. So in this case, firstly, let's update the game board to better center the circles. So we're going to fast forward, come back in a second. And there we have it, guys. We have centered columns. Connect 4 is larger. And as you can see, I can just go back and forth with it and just add to my project. Now, once again, I stress the point of if before I was to commit this file, I would literally go and, read everything, make sure I review it all, just like a pull request, make sure the code is good. So let's go ahead and say I'm happy with all of the changes. I staged everything, and I actually want to go ahead and commit with a pretty good commit message because I don't tend to like the VS Code one that it pops up with. So in this case, I can go ahead and say commit the changes with a suitable message, right? And this is where I find it really handy. So common pain points that I feel Amazon Q CLI tools can be really helpful for is situations such as the following. How many times have you accidentally committed something by accident. Or you maybe need to revert a certain push, but you forgot the command to revert or rebase. Well, this is where I believe Amazon Q will come in really handy, and I personally have used it myself in this fashion. Let's see what it did. You can go ahead and see here, it created a lovely Git message. So in this case, if I was to hover over this, we can actually see it created an awesome commit message. It's very thorough, very nice, using Claude 4, very, very awesome commit message. Now, I'm going to purposely add a bug, right, and commit it. So in this case, I want to say, I want you to add a visual bug to the app on purpose and commit it, right? So in this case, we're going to purposely add a bug to the app and commit the bug, right? So in this case, you can see it added some misalignment. So in this case, I'll introduce a bug that makes the game pieces appear misaligned. So as we can see here, it's gone ahead and added in a couple of things which are going to go ahead and most likely screw things up. For example, math random, margin left, definitely going to make a bit of a mess on the board. And now it's going to go ahead and commit these intentional bugs, okay? So in this case now, as you can see, it says intentionally pushed a bug, right? Intentionally introduced visual bugs for testing. So in this case now, let's assume that this commit, I didn't want to do that. It was an accident, but I forgot how to run the git reset command. Now, sure, you can use things, where you can go ahead and check out, but even I've seen lots of developers that make mistakes at this point in time. So what I can do here is I can use Amazon Q to save the day. So at this point now on Amazon Q, let's say, for example, I accidentally committed a few visual bugs, revert that commit, right? And if you're really, unsure about it, you can say revert the commit with this kind of git message. Or so in this case, I could go ahead and copy the message and I can say, that's the commit that I'm talking about, right? Revert the commit, intentionally introduce visual bugs for testing. So I want to revert that commit. Now, a lot of the time before we had to remember the exact command. We might have done it incorrectly. And some might argue that, it could be simple, but I can promise you when you go into rebase territory and you start rewriting your Git history, it's very easy to make mistakes, especially when it comes to squashing your Git history and choosing which one you want to do, like cherry picking and so forth. So this can come in really handy. And I use it personally a lot within my developer teams inside of my software house. So here you can see it's done a git revert and it's reverted things and pushed it. So in this case, if I was to look at it now, there we have it. We have a perfect revert. Now you can do the same thing for a rebase and all of those things. But as you can see now, this has gone ahead and reverted those changes and undone that. So we have a Git history of what has gone on. Some people prefer to rebase, keep it clean. Some people prefer to show the reverse. Down to how you want to do it. I've done this through and through. I've actually gone ahead and rebased a bunch in my own projects. It works great. And I do recommend that this is going to be a true value proposition. It makes it perfect for students, junior devs, or even seniors who just got fed up of Googling the same Git command over and over again. Now that's pretty cool. We have a fully working Connect 4 app, fully functional with move history, games, and so forth, and results. And it tells us how many moves as well. That's pretty cool. But let's do something even more fun. Okay, so GitHub has something called GitHub Actions. Now, you might have used GitHub Actions before. There is a learning curve to things like the YAML file and the YAML syntax as to how we set up a workflow. But I want to introduce a scenario. Let's go ahead and say that every time I push my code, I want to run Prettier. And Prettier will make sure the code is correctly formatted, maybe ESLint too. I want it to be as part of a CI pipeline. Now, let's go ahead and implement this using Amazon Q, and I'll show you just how powerful it can be. So firstly, I'm going to push this to a GitHub repo. I'm going to create a Connect for Next.js game. I'm going to make it a private repo, and I'm going to create the repository. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add the origin. So in this case, I can do it either manually like this, or I can even just go ahead and give it the repo name. So I can actually go ahead and say push to this repo. And then go ahead and pop that. And you can see I can give it fuzzy text. Now, of course, I could just go ahead and run those things. But in this case, it can also do it on my behalf as well. So in this case, in a moment, it will run this and push this to the main branch. And as you can see, we have a modern Connect 4 game with a beautiful README, all of the game history and features of the app, as well as instructions as to how to use it. So I had to do nothing to pretty much get this up and running, and it done it pretty nicely. Cool. So now I want to introduce GitHub Actions. So every time I push how can we run something when we need to. For example, this could be for deployments. It could be for every time you want to push to make sure the code quality is there. So let's go ahead and introduce that right now. I want to introduce GitHub Actions to this project. Every time we push our code, let's run Prettier and ESLint to ensure the code quality remains high. So in this case, every time I push code, I want to make sure that it goes ahead and runs Prettier and ESLint. So that way we don't ever have code sitting in our repo, which isn't up to the standard that we might like it. So in this case, you can see it's already gone ahead and started to create the GitHub workflow file. So in this case, if we go to the code quality YAML, you can see here, we've got the code quality check is the name. And all of this is usually stuff we would have had to learn, right? The branches it supports, main developed, is for pushing on the main branches as well as for pull requests. And it will run this job like so. And, you know, obviously this, if you had to manually write, it could be a lot of different areas where you might get stuck up and, you know, you might get pretty much caught up on things. So in this case, this is pretty awesome. And it's going to go ahead and do that. Now, let's go ahead and see what it says. It's adding Prettier to the project and creating a configuration file. We can see for ourselves, we've got our package file where it's added Prettier to our dependency array. And then we've also got a Prettier RRC file. And this is essentially how we like our code base to be formatted. So we're going to enforce that every single time that the code is deployed. So now it's actually creating a more comprehensive flow whereby it will include auto formatting as well. So it will actually auto format the code. So you can see it checks out the code, sets up Node.js, installs all the dependencies, runs Prettier, runs ESLint, checks for any changes, and then it commits and pushes those changes like so. And as you can see, it is formatting the code for us. So that npm run format, we'll go ahead and format the code. And now it's fixing a couple of instances where it failed on Prettier and ESLint. This is a prime example of what we see typically a lot. For example, where we have game status, let's just see here, where we have an apostrophe sometimes. So it's a draw. So this is a common example of where you have to escape certain characters to prevent any issues. And as you can see, it's running the quality checks again. It got past it all. And now we're going to commit this and push it to our GitHub. So you can see right now it's committed, added the Git. Let's go ahead and take a look. As you can see, it's added the GitHub Actions for the code quality. And now it's pushed it, which is awesome. So now over on the terminal, you can see it's added GitHub Actions for our code quality. And this is perfect. Code quality check runs on every push and pull request to main and develop branches, auto formats, tools and configurations that it used, and what happens now. So automatically check the code quality, formats, commits the formatted code back to the repo, and it always ensures that we have a high code quality. So obviously you can customize that as much as you want, but let's give it a actual try now. So I'm going to create a manual difference here. So let's just do it's a draw, very simple change. I'm going to manually commit this one. So I'm just going to say, this is literally for testing purposes. I'm just going to say small change, right? Obviously don't do that, right? I'm going to sync my changes right now. It's going to push and pull. And as you can see, it's going to push. We have our small change. We should see small change. There we go. If we go to our actions, we have the small change, which just ran by itself. Right now we have the small change. We can click format and you can see it ran all of the jobs that we had set up. So in this case, you can see like set up the job, commit. So set up the job, check out the code, sets up Node.js, installs dependencies, runs Prettier. In this case, you can see that checks for changes, commit and push changes, and everything was perfect, right? Cleaning up orphan processes. So this was all good. Now, of course, I'm going to add in a actual bug. So in this case, let's go ahead and see if it's all working. So where I told you we have apostrophes, right? Let's go ahead and add in an apostrophe, right? So in that case, that should break our our linter. So in this case, now if I was to go ahead and commit this, so let's just say intentional bug, commit, sync. Yep. Now, if we go to our actions, we should see in a moment, we should have an intentional bug. Now, here will be the curious thing because it should catch that bug and then find it. So in this case, look, code quality YAML is running. So it's running our tasks now on 18 and 20 on Node.js versions. So in this case, we can go ahead and we can click into it and we can see. Now you can see it failed on our code quality check. And this is really handy. So it even shows us all of the things it failed on. And that's a good thing because now we can see, especially for a pull request right now, obviously we push to main, but for a pull request, this will be massively helpful because we would actually go ahead and see a big cross, and then we can set up our pull request so it can never get approved if this has failed. So we can always ensure the code quality remains working. So let's give this a real world test. I'm going to create that same change. So let's go with no winners, and I'm going to add another apostrophe here. So this should break, okay? So I'm going to switch branch right now to create a new branch. I'm going to call it develop. And I'm on the develop branch. I'm going to create a commit. So in this case, I'm going to commit this change on the develop branch. Say bug by Sunny, right? Obviously, this is just for testing purposes. We're going to commit. I'm going to publish this branch, okay? Now, if we head over to our code, we should see a pull request pop up. Develop has recent pushes 5 seconds ago. If we create our pull request now, I want you to pay attention to something. So we're going to create a pull request. And what we should see is, look, all of our code checks are running. This is awesome. So we can see different checks that are being running, and you can see that a code quality check failed. Right now, obviously right now it's running on different, operating things like 18, 20. It's also failing here. So you can see that there's a bunch of failures here as well. And this is really handy because now, of course, we can go ahead and see, whoa, this should not be approved. This should not go forward. We shouldn't allow this code in. And why? What is the problem here? We can see game status on line 43 and 46. So if we go back into our pull request now, you can see like it showed us a bunch of our checks failed. We can obviously go into our files, see what the problem is. And of course, we can see, look, if we actually go in here, obviously I've got it running on different versions. You can obviously simplify this massively. But in this case, it says that it can't be escaped with apostrophe. And so it can be escaped, sorry. So let's go ahead and introduce this fix. So let's just say for now, for simplicity's sake, I just get rid of the apostrophes, okay? I'm going to go ahead and make this change. I'm going to say fixed, right? Just as an example, sync the changes. And let's go ahead and push that to our pull request. So heading back over, we should now see our checks are running. So we have a full CI pipeline running. Of course, don't have commit messages like this. Make them pretty neat, feat or bug or something like this, depending on how your format is. But as you can see here, once these are running, these should all be ticked green, and we should be sure that our code quality is up to scratch. And again, I did all of this with Amazon Q. So there we have it. All the checks passed. Q created a basic CI pipeline. Of course, a little bit of overkill with the amount of different versions that we had. You can obviously simplify this as much as you wish, but it simply runs our Prettier, runs our ESLint, make sure all of the code is up to scratch. And then of course you can go ahead and continue to merge. All of this was done in a relatively easy, low effort manner. This is perfect for someone who's learning DevOps, but also has the stress of maybe their day job, stress of lots of features they need to build. It's a great way to go ahead and learn by trying and inspecting what the outcome is. So in this case, what I'd recommend is you start a side project of your own, use Q to create GitHub Actions, create new features, create different things, inspect the code that you actually created, and then even speak to Amazon Q, ask it to explain the code base, use it as a mentor so you can learn. If I had this when I was learning, oh my God, it would be an absolute dream. Make sure you benefit from it today. So as you can see, that really was quite powerful, very simple to get up and running. It can help solve a lot of our common pain points in development. Now, one story that really stuck with me, however, is a 12-year-old using Q CLI to build a couple of games from scratch with no prior coding experience. Now, you might be wondering, yes, they built it and it could be full of bugs or whatever the case. However, I can guarantee you that if I had this capability when I was younger, it would have introduced me to the world of coding a lot sooner, and I would have started to learn a lot quicker and a lot easier by having essentially a mentor via AI, in this case Amazon Q, and it will go ahead and actually help handle the heavy lifting, generate the code, run the shell commands, set up the game logic, and then I can actually speak to it and ask it to explain and teach me. That's the real game-changing element. So by the end of a weekend, this 12-year-old student had 2 playable games, Pac Nibbles, where basically Pac-Man met Snake mashup, and a simple platformer. That's how accessible this is truly making the software industry. Whether you're coding on Linux servers, tinkering with Raspberry Pis, or just learning for fun, Q really fits right in here. So let's talk about a couple of the features that I really liked from Amazon Q. Firstly, the intelligent autocomplete when I'm inside the terminal. If I go into a game, for example, it has contextual awareness. So if I was to do npm run dev, you can see it goes ahead and gives me all of the commands that I have available at that moment in time. I find that very simple but very handy. It helps with things like Git, Docker, AWS CLI, and so forth. Another thing is that you can use any language when you're actually conversing with the CLI. So if I was to type in Spanish the following, this essentially says explain the game to me. And as you can see, it's explaining everything in Spanish. This again breaks the language barrier for a lot of developers around the world. If I then said explain the above in English, you can see it has multilingual capabilities. It will now go ahead and show me the exact same thing in English. So this is really awesome. I always found it very tricky for the developers who was from around the world. You know, maybe they had great tutorials or they needed mentors, but they spoke different languages. And now it's kind of broken down that barrier. And again, it's a multi-tone conversation. So essentially, you're talking to a real pair programmer here that is not only just suggesting, but acting as it has agentic execution capabilities. And of course, you saw it was using Claude 4 Sonnet. So it had faster reasoning and stability. And I can guarantee they're going to add a bunch more models to this. And I believe there's an ability to use different models on this as well. Now, the biggest question is it safe? Now, by default, Q, as you saw, asks for confirmation before running anything. You can absolutely make sure that it doesn't run anything without your explicit permission. As you can see, I actually allowed it to continuously trust a certain task, but make sure if you do that, you are monitoring it so that way you can actually see what's going on. Now, you can disable the prompts to ask you if you really want to automate your workflows completely, but that's up to you. So a couple of my final thoughts. I didn't expect it to be this useful in all honesty, but I'm using it a lot more than I thought I would. Whether I'm scaffolding projects, fixing Git issues, or automating terminal workflows, it's really made things a lot faster and smoother for me. A prime example, recently, I had to SSH into one of our servers for one of our clients, and I literally installed Amazon Q inside their CLI, and I was using it inside of my server instance, which was very, very handy when all you have to see and work from is a CLI terminal. Very, very useful production use case, and it solved a lot of the issues that we were facing. This isn't going to replace developers, don't worry, but it's like having an AI intern that never gets tired and actually knows what they're doing. I always say this and I stress this enough. Always review the code. Never blindly accept vibe coded content into your repo. It will end in an absolute disaster. I can promise you, when I build apps, we use it to enhance our development capabilities, but we absolutely reject most of the code that is always spat out. I can guarantee you that. We're always building based on good foundations, and then we use this as an assistant to essentially code a little bit quicker. So Papa Fam, if you want to try Amazon Q Developer CLI for yourself, click the first link in the description and you can get started for free with your builder ID without any billing details, and you can try for yourself and see how powerful this thing really is. Again, a massive thank you to Amazon for sponsoring this video. If you found it useful, hit that like button, drop a comment and subscribe for more AI and dev content coming soon. And of course, if you want to level up your game even more and you want to jump into coaching calls with myself, then join our amazing community, 0 to Full Stack Hero 2.0. The link is in the description. As always, guys, it's your boy Papa React, aka Sunny. I will see you in the next video. Peace.